Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So because May is Asian History Month in the US, I wanted to film a video of Asian books by Asian authors that I would recommend, and also books that are still on my TBR. Cindy from Read with Cindy usually does an Asian readathon in May, but I'm not sure if she's going to do one this year. But if not, I'm still planning to read some Asian books in the month of May. So let's first start with some of my recommendations. The first book I want to recommend to you is one that I read for the Asian Readathon last year, and that is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. Now, I do have to admit that I did have some higher expectations going into this. I gave this 3.5 stars, but a lot of people have been loving this. So this is a book inspired by Korean mythology. It features Gumiho, and it's also set in Seoul. And what I love about this book is that the atmosphere is really great, and especially the food is described really well. And I would say if you enjoy watching K-dramas, I think you're also going to enjoy this one. So this is my first recommendation. The next one I think I read for the Asian Readathon last year too, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Young. Once again, the setting of this book is so beautiful. I just loved the atmosphere. I think I also read this in like a 24-hour readathon, like one of the first videos I ever did. But yeah, this is set in a world where there are different species. So we have humans and demons, and then something like in between. Yeah, these are different castes, and the middle one is kind of a combination of both castes. And demons are the highest caste, and then the humans are the lowest. And we follow a girl and a couple of others who are destined to be concubines for the demon king. So definitely a trigger warning for rape in this one, but the trigger warnings are also listed in the beginning of the book. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this is LGBTQ, because I think everyone in the community knows that. Honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. It seemed kind of insta-lovey, to be honest. But I just loved the setting so much. I think I gave it 4.5 stars when I finished it. And I haven't read the sequel yet. I own it, but haven't picked it up yet. And I'm planning to do so in May, maybe. The next one is one that I just finished, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. You can see by the tabs that I really did enjoy it, even though I had some things to criticize, like things that I personally just don't like. For example, it was a little bit much of the fighting scenes for me, and not really much of characters. But this is inspired by Chinese history and also mythology. And especially the first book is based on the Second Sino-Japanese War, so I think it's pretty important to go into this knowing kind of the backstory, because the nations in this book will make more sense then. So yeah, we follow Rin, who is from the southern province, and she aces the Keiju, which is an exam that is really hard to pass, and she basically makes her way to the most noble soldier academy in the north. And because she's from the south, she's a bit darker skinned in comparison to those living at the academy. So there's a lot of colorism and discrimination against that. But the training at the academy is only the first part. After that, we go into the war, and we also have kind of the supernatural element implemented into that. Let's just say it has to do with summoning some gods. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars, but obviously that's a very good rating, and I'm very much looking forward to the sequel, and hopefully that is going to be a 5-star. The next book I want to recommend is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Sabaa Tahir is a Pakistani-American author, and I'm not sure if this is actually Asian-inspired fantasy or if it's like based on the Roman Empire, but nevertheless it's a pretty good book. To be honest, I've read this a long while ago, so I don't remember too much. I just remember really enjoying this one. I probably need to give this a reread because I need to also continue on with the series. So this book follows Laya, whose brother is arrested for treason, and she makes a deal with some spies to get into the Empire's greatest military academy. And there we also have Elias, who is the school's finest soldier and secretly its most unwilling. So It is a pretty good book. I really want to reread it now. But yeah, definitely would recommend the series. The next book I want to recommend is by a Chinese author called Elizabeth Lim, and the book is Spin the Dawn. So this book follows the protagonist, who is a very gifted tailor, and the royal messenger summons her brother to become the royal tailor. However, the brother got really injured in a recent war, so she takes his position instead. However, women are usually not allowed to be a tailor, especially for the royal court, so she has to disguise herself as a man. And there's also a competition to become the actual royal tailor, but that's only the plot for half of the book. The second half is quite different and has some more fantasy elements. Once again, I really loved the atmosphere, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, so I would definitely recommend this one too. Next, I want to recommend some manga to you. First of all, Tokyo Ghoul by a Japanese author called Sui Ishiya, and this is essentially about ghouls kind of invading the city of humans, but you can't really tell who's a ghoul and who's not. And obviously they have a craving for human flesh. I've only read the first volume, but I really want to continue reading this because I really enjoyed the first volume. The next manga is one that is more contemporary, and that is the Orange manga series. This was the first manga series I read, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It basically follows a friend group in school, and one day there is a new boy in class, and for some reason the protagonist of this manga series receives a letter from her future self telling her that this new boy is going to kill himself in the future, and basically gives her steps in order to prevent it. Oh my god. Would also definitely recommend this one. And the next one is probably my absolute favorite manga ever, and that is Death Note, and it's just amazing. You have to pick it up. Essentially, this is about a boy who receives a death note, and he figures out that if he writes a name of a person in that book, that person is going to die. There are a lot more rules to the death note that we, discover in the course of the first two mangas, but the protagonist finds himself working against the police, obviously, and they have another genius, because he's also like a kind of a genius, and they're basically working against each other. And it's so great to read about all their theories and ideas. It's just mind-blowing. I would absolutely recommend this manga series to you. And the author is Japanese. And now to my TBR and kind of the books that I'm most excited for. Really high up on my list is, of course, The Dragon Republic. Hopefully I can read this in May. We'll see if my TBR game cooperates, but I'm just really looking forward to this one. I would also love to get to Girls of Storm and Shadow in May, because I just really loved the first book and I want to see how things develop. Then of course the other sequels like Vicious Spirits, which I don't have a copy of yet, and of course of the other sequels for the mangas like Tokyo Ghoul Volume 2, Death Note Volume 3. Another book by an Asian author that I would love to get to is Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee, who is Hmong, and yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this. After years of training to become the next Queen's royal spy, Saoirse Ashwin's plans are derailed when shamans attack and kill her best friend Sango. And then Saoirse somehow restores Sango to life. Unveiled as the first soul guide in living memory, Saoirse is summoned to the domain of the Spider King. For centuries, he has used his influence over the Dead Wood, an ancient forest possessed by souls, to enforce peace between the kingdoms. Now, with the trees growing wild and untamed, only a soul guide can restrain them. As war looms, Saoirse must master her newly awakened abilities before the trees shatter the brittle peace, or worse, claim Sango, the friend she would die for. So this sounds really, really good. Especially the setting sounds really intriguing, so I'm really looking forward to this one as well. The next one that is high up on my TBR is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in Shanghai in the 1920s, and it kind of features the rivalry of two gangs, I believe. I've heard that it's more plot driven and not really based on Romeo and Juliet, but we'll see. Sometimes I really enjoy just plot-driven books, so maybe I'm also going to read this in May, who knows. And Chloe Gong is a Chinese author. Another book that's been on my TBR for ages is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, who is a Japanese author. And I never feel like I'm ready to read this book, also because it's huge, but it features the friendship of two men, and it's supposed to be super heartbreaking and sad. So yeah, I am not sure when I'm going to read this. We'll see. Then I have a book that I have an arc for, which is The Jasmine Throne. I'm not sure what this is about exactly, but I know it's Indian inspired, I think. And a lot of people are really excited about that book, and I know it's in one of my book boxes, so I'm really excited to get the physical copy. And yeah, maybe I'll be able to put it on my May TBR as well. And lastly, a book that I don't own yet because it's pretty expensive. It's like 25 euros, so I'm just waiting for it to become a little bit cheaper. But I really want to get to Jade's City by Fauna Lee, who is, I think, a Chinese and Malaysian author. And once again, I'm not too sure what this is about, but I know it's an urban fantasy, and I've heard so many good reviews, so I'm just really excited to pick that one up. So yeah, these are all of my recommendations and books that are on my TBR. I hope you got some recommendations as well, or I motivated you to pick that one book up. I'm definitely planning to read as many Asian books as I can in May, so I'm really excited for the next month. And also for my TBR game, because I'm not sure if it's really going to cooperate. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.